Hey everyone, it's Luna, and today I'm making a video about a very common belief among religious people when it comes to people who have left Christianity or any other possibly high demand religion, and that is, did I just choose what is easy by leaving religion instead of what I felt was right? So, I get this a lot from people, especially in the very high demand religion that I used to be in, which was a Christian based religion. Um, and keep in mind, this video is not to say anything bad about Christianity or any religion in general. This is just to show the big misconception that a lot of religious people have when someone decides to leave their faith. So, something I hear a lot is people say, oh, that person just left because they just wanted to believe what was easy to believe. And the funniest thing is when they quote Dumbledore from Harry Potter, when they say something, I can't remember exactly how the quote goes, but it's something like, at a certain point, you have to choose between what is right and what is easy. And it's so funny to hear religious people say that because a lot of people in Christianity also think that Harry Potter is evil and it's witchcraft and it's teaching children witchcraft and things like that. So I've been told that by becoming spiritual but not religious, I was just choosing what was easy. I was choosing what felt good to me, and that, I've also heard that it's just because I wanted to sin, and being spiritual but not religious doesn't have any rules to it. So you just get to do whatever sin you want, and that is not the case at all. I actually have another video. If you look at my channel page, it's a video from my old channel, but it's still linked on my channel page here on YouTube. So I do have a video explaining the whole did I just want to sin thing, which is not true. I actually still don't do any of the sins that were considered sins in my old religion. For example, I still don't drink alcohol, and I have nothing against people who drink alcohol responsibly. But personally, I just don't have any desire to drink. I don't smoke. I mean, I'm married and I'm very faithful to my husband in the intimacy department. So I don't, sleep around or anything. So I don't sin like that. I definitely left for reasons that had to do with information and not because there was some secret sin that I wanted to do. So definitely wasn't that. But when it comes to things that are easier to believe as far as spirituality, some people say, well, you just didn't want to, believe in the Bible version of God because he's stricter and whatever, scarier or something like that. But actually, there were a lot of things within the type of spirituality that I believe in now, which is non-religious spirituality, or one could say New Age spirituality, or whatever you may call it. Spiritualism is what a lot of people are calling it now. There's a lot of things within that were hard for me to grasp. They were hard for me to believe, but because of the research I did and actually a lot of scientific studies that back up a lot of these things, I could not deny these things anymore, and that's why I started believing them. Not because I had a good feeling that I should have faith in them. And the things I believe in are no longer about faith or having good feelings, because those don't make any sense as far as logic. We could have a good feeling about something and have it not be true. So it's very interesting that a lot of people who leave religion are told that they just are doing what was easier to believe, when a lot of times they're believing things that have facts and logic backing them up and even studies. But the people in religion are usually the ones that are just following feelings that don't have any real facts attached to them. Not all the time, obviously, and I'm not trying to speak for every religious person, but typically this is what I have seen. So, some examples of things that were hard for me to believe emotionally were the idea, first of all, about the difference in what I believe about prayer now. So, when I was religious, I obviously believed that prayer was me speaking to a literal being, a literal father figure, a person. A person, a godly person, was hearing me and taking in the information that I was telling him, and he would either help me directly or send like angels or whatever spiritual helpers to help me, or even inspire another human being to come and help me by the power of the Holy Ghost. That's what I believed. And whenever I had any hard times, I would even just say a silent prayer. Like if I was driving in the car or if I was out among other people, I would just instinctually start praying in my mind. And to be honest with you, I still have that instinct, even though I don't believe there's a literal person hearing me anymore. For those who don't know, I'm not an atheist, I am a panentheist. So I believe that what we call God is it's a consciousness, it's a consciousness or an energy that we're all part of. And the consciousness that animates our brains and our bodies and that allows me to talk to you right now and has me experiencing the world just like you do, that's consciousness that is attached to this collective unconscious mind, if that makes any sense. So our unconscious minds are all connected with this collective unconscious that we call God. And I have other videos about that if you're interested in panentheism, and I plan to make more. So in that way, I don't believe that you can just pray and a person hears you, because I don't believe God is just a person looking down and judging everyone. I believe that God is a consciousness, essentially. So in that way, prayer became very different for me because I wasn't seeking help outside of myself anymore when I prayed. Prayer is more like meditation and affirmations, just on surface level, like positive affirmations. But now that my spirituality has progressed more, I see it more as speaking with my higher self, speaking with higher entities that may be out there. Not like summoning spirits or anything, but just being more like, I'm welcoming the presence of my guides, guardians, ancestors, things like that. It's more about invoking energy and invoking fellow consciousness to you for guidance or for inspiration and things like that. But it's not relying on those things to help you, because ultimately you are the one who helps you, or other people are the ones who help you. And that was really, it was tough to not want to give my power and my problems away to someone else anymore, and instead have to sit with my own emotions and sit with all these things that may be scaring me and things like that. But once I did that, I was able to really do my shadow work, which means I was able to look inside myself and see the causes for the things that were bothering me, because I was forced to sit with them and I was forced to find solutions for them myself. And so it turned out to be a good thing that I figured all of this out. I think some people definitely do need prayer in their lives, and I would never try to make somebody that I know personally feel bad for praying or try to tell them that they're wrong or anything like that. But for me, this is just what makes sense to me, because there's so much evidence against the idea of a personified God or a literal man in the sky, if that makes any sense. So the other thing that was difficult for me to grasp when it came to this new type of spirituality that I follow is reincarnation. So obviously when I was religious, I believed that after you die, you go to heaven. And in my religion, there were several different levels of heaven. But we had essentially the highest heaven, and then we had a middle zone, and then we had the lowest level, which was still better than earth, actually, but it was a removal from God, so it was still essentially considered hell. And there was more to it than that. It was much more complicated than that, but essentially that was it. So I figured if I'm good and I do everything that my religion teaches and that my leaders in the religion tell me to do, then I'll be considered worthy of going and living with God again. And that will be heaven, and I don't have to worry about anything else because everything will be perfect there, and I'll have no suffering and no sorrow and blah, blah, blah. And if you think about it, living forever and never experiencing any ups and downs in how you're feeling and having everything just be perfect all the time would actually end up being torture. Because when you don't have anything unpleasant going on at all, and I'm not saying, that the horrible things that happen in life are pleasant and good. I'm just saying if you never have anything unpleasant or any kind of conflict or challenge happening to you at all for eternity, you don't have anything to compare to to happiness. You'll never know what happiness feels like. You'll forget what it's like to have the highs in life as well as the lows. And there's actually a Twilight Zone episode about this. I forget exactly what the episode is called, but a man essentially goes to heaven and gets everything he wants. And this guy wasn't a very, he wasn't a very good guy. And so his heaven is filled with women and, all the women he could ever want. And it's filled with gambling. I think he used to cheat at gambling or something in the episode. So in his version of heaven, he wins at every gambling game that he ever plays. And he has this really nice house to live in and all the finest things. And eventually he gets so tired of it all. Like when you keep playing game after game when you're gambling and you're like, oh, look at that, I won again, because that's all he ever did was win. And he didn't have to try to get any women in his life anymore. They all just flocked to him, and he eventually got tired of that. And at the end of the episode, spoiler alert, you find out he was actually in hell. So it wasn't heaven. I thought that was interesting because that's how heaven essentially is advertised to us when we're in religion, is you have all the comfort in the world. You have all the things that you could ever want. Anytime you want, I often thought, and a lot of people in my religion would talk about this too. It wasn't an official doctrine, but we figured, there will be food there, like chocolate, and you can eat all that you want and never get fat. And just the idea of every perfect thing you could ever think of, every pleasure you could think of is there. Within reason. All the pure pleasures, I guess. In my religion, though, we still believed that a husband and wife could be intimate in heaven, so that's interesting. But if you really think about it, living that way forever would not be pleasant at a certain point. It would be like hell. So when it comes to reincarnation, the reason that I started believing in it was the way it started was I watched an episode of a show on Netflix called Surviving Death. And there's a whole episode in there about reincarnation. And it talked about several people's past life stories that matched up with real people who had passed. And one of them was a little boy. I always forget the name of the boy in this story and who he thought he was. But essentially he was a pilot who also fought in a war. People can fact check me on this. But this story was so convincing to me. I just couldn't refute it. the information that this little boy understood about someone he had never met, who his parents had never heard of. He had never watched a television show about it. He had never read. I don't think he was old enough to read even when he came up with this. But the way that he knew was he had nightmares about his plane crashing, and he also knew the name of a ship that he was on in the war, something like that. He knew so many details, and he knew his old name. And when his parents looked up this person he was talking about, it was a real person. And had, with all those same details about his life. And it just blew me away. And since then, I've heard lots of other stories, especially from children who remember their past lives. I've seen them all over the place, and come to find out, there's actually a division of the University of Virginia that has a division for, I forget exactly what the title is, but some kind of division for studies specifically on children who remember their past lives. And this department in this university has been going on for 20 plus years. So the fact that so many of these stories are accurate, and even, study after study from the University of Virginia shows this too, that these stories are accurate. Not every single child that's ever interviewed about past lives is going to have an accurate story, of course, but so many do, and it's so significant, and it happens so often, them being accurate. That's why it's gone on for 20 plus years. So when you factor all of that in, I just couldn't deny anymore that reincarnation probably is real. And I already believed in spirits still, even after leaving religion. That's why it was so hard for me to fully commit to, I'm an atheist or something like that, because I just couldn't shake the idea that there is a spirit within each of us. And the reason for that is, I think I've talked about this before in some videos, but for me, it goes back to a scientific reason, which is the first law of the conservation of energy states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. And I believe that our consciousness is an energy. And that's just what makes sense to me. It's what animates our bodies and our brains. Our consciousness is something that essentially exists beyond our physical body. And if you factor all of that in, it makes sense why we could then come back. This energy can come back into physical bodies again and again. So those things were difficult for me to believe, because then once I started believing in reincarnation, it was still unsettling to me, because then I had to think, well, who was I in a past life? Did I do bad things? Am I working through karmic debt now? Am I whatever? And I should make another video about karma in the future, because I have not so orthodox beliefs about karma. But I had all these things like, well, are there people from my past lives, such as an old spouse or children that I had, that are in my life now? Like, how can I find them? Like, I was just racking my brain over so many things. And since then, I've settled down when it comes to that. But the idea that that after I die, I'm just going to go on to live again and again and again in new bodies and new life settings made me very nervous, because I had such a negative view of the world that religion had given me. Because religion teaches us that the world is a horrible, awful, dirty place that we don't want to be. It's evil out there. The world is evil. And we were always taught that we should be in the world, but not of the world, because the world is so evil. And now I don't see it that way anymore. There's definitely horrible things, horrible, unspeakable things that happen in this world. But there's also a balance of good and wonderful things if we look. This world is very much yin and yang. It's both the good and the bad. And we're supposed to experience good and bad in this life, not just perfection, because then it would be exactly like what I talked about with the heaven scenario. Things can't be all good. Otherwise, there'd be no balance of anything, and you would never experience happiness because you wouldn't know what it was. So once I figured all that out, I felt better about it. But if we're just going off of the idea that I was just going for beliefs that made me happy, like, oh, I'm just all about love and light and rainbows, forget about Jesus and stuff. No, it absolutely was not like that. In fact, I still believe that Jesus was a real person, and I think that more people need to listen to his teachings. I don't call myself a Christian just because what we know about Jesus is actually not that much. We have the Gospels that were written about him, but those were written way long after he was crucified. And they were likely by people who didn't even know him personally. And we're not even sure who wrote the Gospels. Like, there's many different factors as to why I don't call myself a Christian. Also, a lot of the claims of Jesus resurrecting or performing miracles and stuff came later. Because, yeah, I could go into a whole video about that as well. I have some TikToks about it too, but a lot of the claims of Jesus miracles actually were very similar to gods like Mithra and others, that like the god of wine, turning water to wine, dying and rising gods that have been in pantheons since the beginning of humanity, things like that. So those things are unreliable when it comes to the record of Jesus' life. But the sheer impact that Jesus had on the world, that's a pretty big indicator to me that there really was a teacher named Yeshua or Jesus that had his own sect of believers and went around teaching people. I really believe that that was a real thing. It's more likely that Jesus was more on the Gnostic side in his beliefs rather than the way Christianity looks at things now. But so I don't hate Jesus or anything like that. And I don't think, oh, Jesus wasn't real. I think he likely was. If you're someone who believes Jesus wasn't real, that's okay, because I don't have ultimate proof for you. But just logically, I think that there probably was a teacher or a rabbi named Yeshua that was teaching people. And that was a very common name back then too. Anyway, so the next time you hear about someone leaving religion and they say that they're spiritual but not religious, don't just automatically assume that they're going for whatever was easy for them to believe, because a lot of times that is not true. In fact, having a faith transition can feel like a faith crisis a lot of the times. When you're navigating, trying to find out what to believe in when you've only been presented fully with one belief system and now that's fallen apart, it can be so scary and daunting and have so much anxiety within it in this experience. Feeling like you don't know if your prayers are being answered or being listened to by anybody, feeling like you may be ultimately alone when you pray, and there's no one really there. That, from my own experience, that is an extremely lonely and scary feeling. So I'm glad that I've figured all that out now, but it definitely wasn't easy. And people saying that I'm just believing what's easy or what feels good to me almost feels like an insult, because they don't take into account what a faith transition actually entails emotionally and mentally. So I just thought I would share my experience, because I'm seeing more and more people walking away from organized religion now, and especially the religion that I used to be a part of. So I think it's important that more people become understanding of what it's like to have this experience. I'm so glad that I had this experience. It's given me a spirituality that is making me happy for the first time in my whole life, to be honest. And it's giving me meaning, not just because it's making me feel good, but because things make sense now. I can actually join my spiritual beliefs with science, and with logic and reason. And this is something so valuable to me because I care about truth more than I care about what makes me feel good. So, I hope this makes sense. If you guys like this video, be sure and push like and also subscribe and hit the bell so that you get notifications. If you've had an experience like this, like a faith transition, put it in the comments below. I would love to hear your experience. And if you've also had people telling you that you're just believing whatever feels good or whatever's easy, or that you just wanted to sin, I want to know about that. I want to know about your experiences if you're willing to share. If you like this channel, be sure to subscribe. I make a lot of videos about spirituality, about faith transitions, leaving religion, and finding true spirituality outside of religion. So don't miss it. I will talk to you guys later.